Hi, Mr. Cashone, Springville High School. This video is for juniors and the parents of juniors. I wanted to make something that covers a lot of topics that I typically talk about in my spring scheduling meetings, so I could have something to point back to. These things sometimes I hit in different orders or hit in piecemeal, so I could have something that I could point back to that was sort of a more complete thought on post-high school planning with college. So without further ado, let me just jump right in. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, typical college timeline. Applications are done August to November, December-ish or so of senior year. Financial aid is a process I'll talk about at the end. That opens up on October 1st. And then your final decision is not something that's made until really spring of your senior year. Usually it's April 1st or May 1st that you have commit dates from colleges. So you really have that much time to make your decision. What we like to get students to the point to in the fall is that they have a short, workable list of colleges that they've looked at. So that's kind of what this video is geared towards trying to get you towards, is how do you get to that short, workable list that we can move forward with. So college admissions factors. What kinds of things do they look at to decide, if a college is a good fit for you, if you'll be admitted to a college? The big three are overall average, SAT scores or ACT scores, and then strength of schedule. Overall average is still probably, the big one. That is, really the first thing a college typically sees when you've applied. GPA is something that, we will give to you in the fall of your senior year, your sixth semester GPA. It's basically an average of all your classes weighted by the number of credits. Some colleges will use that as is. Some colleges will remove non-academic courses and reweight that. But we'll report what we report to you in the fall of your senior year. Generally, if you look at your overall average that you've carried through high school, that's going to be pretty close to what your GPA is. SAT or ACT scores, we're in very different era right now of college admissions. The COVID pandemic has really sort of lessened the requirement of these two things. Most four-year colleges prior to COVID required one or the other of these. And if you don't know what the SATs or ACTs are, I made a video a few weeks ago about what they are and how to register for them. So I would refer you back to that. But since then, a lot of colleges have changed from requiring these to either recommending them or making them optional. So there is no one answer in terms of whether or not you need to take them. I would check with the potential colleges that you're applying to. The more competitive, the more likely they might require them, or they might require them for a special scholarship there or things like that. As I said in the video I made previously, if you're trying to play the game safe, I would consider signing up and taking them. And then strength of schedule is looking at how challenging the list of courses is that you took. So things like honors courses, AP courses, Regents level courses, in New York State that have a culminating Regents exam, show a level of rigor. And that can be something that helps in college admissions. Extras, of course, things like leadership activities, volunteer work, extracurricular work, in or out of school. All of those could be things that are, the extra little bit that pushes you one way or the other. But big three are definitely the first three that are mentioned there. I mentioned SATs and ACTs. So I have a separate video on that, so I'm going to kind of scroll past this one. I'll just show you very quickly. These are the places that you go to sign up. And there are links to those right on the high school guidance website, which I will refer to later in this video. Some terminology you'll hear: public colleges versus private colleges. Public colleges have tuition reductions for New York State residents. And if it's a public college in a different state, the same would hold true for residents of that state. Costs are similar to other colleges within the system. These public colleges generally offer less in academic financial aid than private colleges do, typically because their sort of sticker price cost is lower. Private colleges, a little different, totally privately funded, no state affiliation. Costs can vary greatly, and typically offer more in financial aid. In financial aid, some have religious and different cultural affiliations to them. But when you hear those words sort of tossed about, public and private, that's what they mean. Just because it's a public school doesn't mean, necessarily that it's going to be cheaper. After financial aid, sometimes private colleges certainly can be. And again, we'll hit the the financial aid topic at the end of this. Another thing to be wary of is public colleges outside of New York State are going to look at you as an out-of-state student, so you won't get that tuition reduction for being in-state. Factors to consider when applying to a college: major and cost, the types of financial aid they offer, type of scholarship they offer, proximity to home. Athletics are sometimes a consideration, and if you sort of are achieving to a high level in athletics and you're looking at colleges that offer a Division I or Division II athletics, what I'm showing here is the high school guidance page. There is a piece of that called Athlete NCAA Information, and I would refer you to this page if you are a really strong athlete looking at Division I or Division II colleges. You may have to register for the NCAA Eligibility Center, the NCAA Clearinghouse, to have them evaluate your transcript for eligibility. To do a college search, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. I mean, I sort of would refer kids very often to going back here to our college search page. We have two options. One of them is through the College Board. It's called Big Future. And this will look at colleges that are all over the country, national, public colleges, private colleges, in-state, out-of-state. The other search criteria we have here will just look at New York State public colleges. And, sometimes students will use one of these two things or a combination of the two of them if they're really trying to cast a wide net in terms of their college search. And all of them will allow you to search by some of these things: intended major, cost. Of course, on the SUNY side, that's going to be fairly similar. But once you drill down to the college websites, you'll be able to look at financial aid and location and all those kinds of things. Flip forward a little bit here. Whoops. College visits. I hearken college visits back to kind of like test driving a car. Is that, before I went and test drove a car, I would be looking at a lot of things first. I would be looking at the college in terms of, what kind of information can you get from their website? What kind of information can you get about the majors they have? What kind of information can you get about cost or, scholarships that they offer? Going to a college campus and seeing a campus is sometimes a huge part of the decision-making process. However, it can be something that, if you haven't sort of done some homework first, might get your student really attached to a particular college that maybe doesn't have the major that they are offering, or maybe the cost of that college is something that gives you some concern. Very often, that can be the case. But let me go back to this slide. I'm going to go back to sharing, and I just have some tips on college search in general. Just in the process of going through some of this stuff myself, my daughter is a junior in high school, and we've done a couple of college visits. So I am experiencing this as a dad as well here right now. So if possible, visit when the school is in session. And I think that's really important. You take a local college like UB, very large college, lots of activity. It's going to look very, very, very different during weekends and summer months, or when it's out of session, than it will during in session. So it's not always possible, especially if colleges are a long way away. But when possible, I would try to visit when the school is in session. If possible, get to see a class. and get to see more than just the sort of shiny admissions tour that they take you on, where they walk you around and show you the newest and sort of like most picturesque parts of a campus. So I'll jump down to the last bullet point here. Reach out to your department reach out to the department your child is interested in. That is something that a lot of times, admission offices won't necessarily set up a tour of the music department. You may need to contact somebody in the music department and say, hey, my son or daughter is interested in coming to this university and being a music performance major or a music education major. Can we meet with you? Can we sit in on a class that you would typically teach freshmen? Can we do? And some departments are more willing to do those things than others. Speaking personally, I've had a couple of schools really sort of departments sort of really bend over backwards to give us a look at their side of the school that we would have never seen on an admissions tour. So it's a little extra step, but I think it can be a more worthwhile extra step because I think it gives your student a better chance to see what an actual class there would look like, and maybe what an actual professor is like. But definitely don't go around the admissions office. Schedule your visit with them. Admissions will definitely track who has been to see a college and who hasn't, and that can sometimes help you in the decision-making process. So even if you have a friend or a cousin that goes to this college and they just say, oh, come on up and I'll show you around, you don't need to go through admissions. I would set up an admissions tour because it can be important for you to know, that you're there. And of course, lastly there, make full use of the college's website prior to visiting. I mean, I would go, with some questions that you've taken from, that particular major's portion of the website, and maybe, that will help you get some information from people who are knowledgeable while you're there. So college applications. The top two, the SUNY application and the common application, are probably the top two type of college applications we see. Why is that? Well, they allow students to apply to more than one college using one application. The SUNY application, you can apply to multiple public colleges, New York State public colleges, SUNYs, on one app. And the common app allows you to do multiple colleges that are both a combination of public or private colleges. I would say, looking at those two things, Common App has a larger number of schools that are included with it. It's a longer application, but it typically has a sort of wider breadth, and it's sort of become the more common one we see. If you know that your student is only applying to SUNYs, well, then stick with the SUNY application. It's shorter. They'll probably get through it quicker. There's a little bit less detail with it. There are some other third-party things out there. And then, of course, there's always the old school way of applying, paper and pencil or applying directly to the college. If you do that, you have to tell us you've done so we can send your transcript. The only way for us to know is if you tell us. With these first two, with SUNY App or Common App, once you've applied, there should be a mechanism to trigger us to let you know to send your transcript off. And that's how they help evaluate you for admissions with that. Couple application terms to be aware of. Supplemental applications. These are something you see a lot with SUNY apps, is that you'll send in your SUNY app and you'll put Brockport, Geneseo, UB, and Fredonia on that. And then you'll get back individual supplemental applications from each of these schools. So that is sometimes the SUNY app can be multi-part, have multiple parts or segments to it. So that is something to be on the lookout for, is that sometimes when you just finish that first part, there's additional pieces coming. Be aware of deadlines, especially for things like auditions or scholarship deadlines. So, a college may say, our deadline is not till February 1st, but they might have a scholarship whose deadline, is December 1st. And that's why we encourage kids to get stuff in as early as possible. Definitely for things like auditions and portfolio reviews, if you're going into any kind of, art major or performance-based major, you want to get your application, your paper application, online application in early, because that's the trigger to schedule those second parts of that. Two terms that are thrown around quite a bit: early decision and early action. They don't mean the same thing, but they sound like the same thing. So let me explain the difference. Early decision is a binding contract if you accept it. Early action is non-binding. Early action is simply an award or a reward for applying early. Okay, so both of them involve you getting your application in early. But with early decision, if they accept it, they're going to send you an acceptance letter, and they're also going to send you a contract that says by accepting this early decision to University of Rochester, by accepting this early decision to University of Rochester, you also indicate that you will pull all of your other applications. Now, that can be a little bit dangerous in the college admission process. I'm not saying there's never a scenario where you want to go early decision, but I am saying you should be super confident that that school is a school that you can afford and that you're comfortable with whatever financial aid package they give you. Because what you're essentially doing by going early decision is you are saying, I don't want to look at any other offers. This is the offer I'm going to take. That makes me a little nervous, but there are some cases when that is something that's, could be a good idea, particularly if they attach additional scholarship to that. Early action is simply a reward for applying early. An early action deadline might be, if you apply to SUNY Geneseo by the 15th of November, we're going to let you know by December 15th. So it's really just a reward for applying early. And if there's an early action, guide for applying to someplace, I would hit it, because definitely better with college admissions to be earlier in the process of applying than later. Many colleges have moved to what's called rolling admissions, which is different than deadline admissions. Now, deadline admissions would be, your college application is due by the 15th of January. And, under that system, they don't even start looking at those applications until after the 15th. In rolling admissions, which is becoming more and more popular, colleges start looking at and accepting people as soon as they get applications. So if you want to be a psychology major and there's 100 seats in their psych department for freshmen, if they start filling those seats in October and there's 99 seats left, you have a lot better chance of getting a seat if there are 99 to go when you've sent your application in, as opposed to if you send your application in late February when they have 3 seats left. So with rolling admissions, even though there's no deadline, early is always better. Letters of recommendations are very often a piece of college applications. The Common App has a very formalized process for that, where you invite your recommender via email. They get an email from Common App, and then your recommender submits that recommendation right to Common App. Even though they have this formalized process, I think the best practice here is to always go talk to a potential recommender first. And recommenders, usually the college will guide you in that. They're looking for, 2 academic teachers and, 1 coach or 1 advisor or 1 club leader that's, is sort of gives you a different view of the student. But they let your student choose who they want to pick. So you obviously want to choose, or your student wants to choose teachers they've had a good experience with, who are going to be able to say, firsthand some good things, about them, or a coach or club leader who can do the same thing. Always want to go talk to that person first and say, would you consider writing me a letter of recommendation for college? They're going to say yes. And after they do, say, okay, be on the lookout for an email from Common App. That's where you're going to do it. And of course, you always want to follow up afterwards. Thank you notes, thank you emails, all that stuff is good courtesy. Also want to follow up to make sure that they've sent it in. Sometimes these things get pushed aside, and a follow-up, phone call or a follow-up, question can be the thing that gets it in and done. College essay, also another popular part of college applications. Don't save it for the night before it's due. Get some help, not just Grammarly. Get some actual people to read it, so that they can give you some tips and feedback in terms of how you can edit that. Most college essays are pretty open-ended, ask you to talk a little bit about yourself, some experiences. Maybe they ask you to talk about an experience that was challenging or ways that you've grown. Be confident, but be honest. It's kind of a difficult line sometimes to tread, but I remind kids a lot that you're a high school student. They're not expecting somebody here who's won, a Nobel Prize. You're a high school student. Be honest about your experiences, be honest about your strengths, and also be honest about, where you need to grow. And I think those are the college application essays that read the best. Post-application communication. Notify your counselor where and how you've applied and request an official transcript be sent. Again, if you used Common App, if you've used SUNY App, you certainly can ask me, Mr. Prashone, did you get my Common App or my SUNY App? But most likely, those come to me as soon as you hit, send. I'll get a notification as long as you've done it correctly to go ahead and proceed with the next step. If you want me to write a recommendation, happy to do that. Sometimes it's required. I have a process I'll roll out to seniors in the fall about how to do that, or how I like to do that, and how I like to make my letter read a little bit different. One of the things I say to students a lot with letters of recommendation is you want to make sure that if you're asking 3 different people for recommendations, that you get 3 different letters, that you don't want 3 different letters that sound the same, that talk about the same things. So if a student asks me in the fall to write a letter of rec, I have a document that I use that sort of helps shape that so that it sounds and reads a little bit different than the other ones they've had go out. Lastly, financial aid. Financial aid is a really, really big piece of the college application process. I want to just sort of refer you to 3 links on our high school guidance website. There's one for financial aid info, one for regional national scholarships, and then one for graduation scholarships. So I'm going to flip over to the website here. Let me go back just to the high school guidance website. So if you go under college information, financial aid starts with something called the FAFSA. Any college that's going to offer any kind of state or federal money is going to start you here, okay? I would refer you to this page for a little kind of description about what kinds of financial aid can come out of the FAFSA. And then at the bottom, there is a link to complete the FAFSA. Again, financial aid is a little bit more than I want to get into in this video. Possibly might make another or refer you to another for that for the fall. But this is where you can go to get some questions answered. 2 other links on there, Scholarship Regional. A lot of times kids will ask us, where can I go look for scholarships? Well, anything that we get sent, we will post here. Most of the things you're going to see right now on this list are things that are targeted towards seniors, and that's typically how scholarships run. But this list revolves throughout the year. Many colleges, have gone to an online application. So often if you check back here and you see something you think you might be a good fit for, it's moving forward. You have to hit their online link and go from there. At the very bottom of this list, we always post a list of college scholarship search engines where you can go and create a profile and for free, tell those search engines a bit about yourself, and they will email you links to scholarships that you could possibly apply for. So this is all something I wouldn't start as a junior, but it's something that's out there. We talk to kids more about it during senior reviews, which are meetings that happen in the fall, where we try to talk about things like where are you applying, where are you with financial aid, that kind of stuff. So we will definitely show your student this again, but I just put it out there now so you can kind of see what it looks like. And I think that about covers, where I want to go with this. I mean, that is more than I typically get into in most of these junior scheduling meetings. But I usually touch on some aspect on it if a student is interested in going on to college. So I think if you have any questions, please reach out to me here at the high school, either through email or my office is 592-3258. I'd be happy to try to, take your questions and help you any way I can. Thanks.